Thank you, friends. Shabbat Shalom. Greetings to you all. My apologies go out to Marty, who, while he liked last week's show a lot, he didn't like having the Gospel of John quoted in it. I understand. And while I wasn't trying to promote any anti-Semitic writings, I was trying to make a point about the power of words and how they've been seen across cultures and across time. Forgive me, Marty. Michael, I hope you had a great birthday and a wonderful party last week. I'm sure it was special being surrounded by all your family and friends. And many of you have told me how much you really enjoy the history that I add and the definitions that I give you for a lot of the words. And a lot of people seem to really like the references to music, which makes many of you think of those songs that take you back to an earlier time differently. One fan wrote in saying that he felt it was like listening to them for the first time, learning different things the songs said or pointed to. Well, thank you. And as the Blue Jays sang, this time we are saved by the music, saved by the song we can sing. This time we're saved by the music, saved by the song that you bring. Friends, keep bringing music to life. And thankfully, we're in the midst of a ceasefire in Gaza that, may or may not last, and let's hope that a lasting resolution can be found. Friends, Tuesday of this week marked the infamous 9th of Av, Tish B'Av. It's a fast day, not in terms of speedy, but in terms of, you don't eat. It's the day that marked the destruction of the two great Jerusalem temples. It is considered to be the saddest day in Judaism, and is about the only time you would ever hear the Book of Lamentations read in the synagogue. Now, the Book of Lamentations is a fascinating book, and you'll find it kind of buried in the Tanakh. It's after the Torah, in the Ketuvim, the writings. And remember, friends, the Tanakh is made up of the Torah, which are the teachings, the Nevi'im, which are the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which are the writings. Lamentations consists of 5 distinct poems, corresponding to its 5 chapters, and the first 4 are written as acrostics. And friends, many prayers and some psalms that you do in your own personal services are also written that way, as I'm sure you're aware. Chapters 1, 2, and 4 each have 22 verses, corresponding to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, with the first line beginning with the first letter of the alphabet, the second with the second letter, and so on. The chapter 3 has 66 verses, so that each letter begins 3 lines. And the 5th poem, while not acrostic, still has 22 lines, 1 for each letter. It is an interesting book. It is a sad book. And the 11th of August will mark the 15th of Av, Tu B'Av. And get ready, friends, because that date represents a type of Jewish Valentine's Day, except unfortunately without the chocolate. It's a festival of hugs followed by a carnival of care. It represents the beginning of the grape harvest. And on that date, unmarried girls would wear white and go dancing through the fields. It's fantastic to see. It has a history dating at least to the Talmud period, where it was suggested because of the restriction that was put on female inheritance, which we talked about a few weeks ago, having to be maintained through the tribe, and therefore restricting females in terms of their freedom of who they can marry. In the 40th year, the year of the end of the Exodus, this was lifted, allowing freedom to marry intertribal. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I do love it as a holiday. And so it has become an annual time for dancing and celebrating love. And I can't think of a better thing to celebrate than love. It had lost popularity for the longest time, but in the last several decades, it has made a strong comeback, much more so in Israel than in North America. It is the most popular and difficult day to book a wedding in Judaism for. Just like some North Americans register their kids for school practically on the day they're born, some try to book this date for a wedding well in advance. And it happens to be my anniversary. So happy anniversary, my dear. I wouldn't be who I am without you. And I do like the chocolate. I'd like to say hello to Tiffany, who's heading back to Illinois to get married the next week. And it's fantastic that her father is building her chuppah for her. What a great memory to have. Blessings to you, Tiffany, and of course congratulations go to Rachel and Daniel, who are getting married next week, and to Joanna in Walls, getting married the week after. Both couples I am fortunate enough to be officiating for. Moses' farewell address, which barely had begun last time, is in full swing now. And not only does it contain a repetition of the Ten Commandments, it contains the most significant and defining prayer in Judaism. This week, friends, we explore Va'et Hanan, and I implore. Friends, remember Jacob's first two sons, Reuben and Simeon, were named for sight and sound, the two most important senses involved in the deception of Isaac. And in this book, sight takes a backseat to sound. And you will see that again and again. Or should I say, you'll hear it again and again. And I'll note it for you every so often, as I have before. And as I mentioned last time, this is a different but a fascinating book, this book of words. Words and themes wind from Genesis through Exodus, through Leviticus and Numbers, and into Deuteronomy like threads through fabric. Keep reminding yourself that the real name of this book is words. They make the difference. While this book is the Mishnah HaTorah, the repetition of teaching, that title takes away from how important and how much the words stand on their own and what is heard. Now you know that you are real. Show your friends that you and me belong to the same world, turned on to the same word. Have you heard? You know, I always love the Moody Blues on the Threshold of a Dream, and it will always hold special meaning and feelings for me. Words, friends. They're the most fascinating things. The story of the Exodus is wound through this, because in this parsha you'll be struck by several things. There's a very strong Joseph-Moses parallel, for one. When Joseph's brothers were accused of spying in Egypt, they remembered how Joseph implored them, and they wouldn't listen. And now Moses uses the same word as Moses implores, and God wouldn't listen. And the word he used, Tosef, has the same root as Joseph. And the story of the Exodus began with Joseph when he was sold into slavery in Egypt, beginning the 400 years of slavery. And it's going to end with Joshua, who was a descendant of Joseph. We see these metaphors for life, the great metaphor for life being water. It represented Moses' beginning, being drawn from the river, the Nile. And it represents his death as he stares out across the Jordan. And it takes us back to Eden and the beginning of all life and the 4 rivers that flowed from it. And what we're going to see is Moses begins by saying, Ve'ata, and now Israel, hear. And this introduces the grand sermon that stands for most of the rest of Deuteronomy. And friends, there's a fantastic retelling of the Ten Commandments. And we are reminded that they are the covenant. All other commandments may be important with their own series of rewards and consequences, but the Ten Commandments on the tablets are different. And we're told that we must not add and we must not take away. But we've also seen that this is an organic, changing code requiring generational interpretation. And it has resulted in a great charge to our rabbis over time to walk a fine line. And it's why tradition is so important. As Tevye says in Fiddler, when asked why, he says, I don't know, but it's a tradition. And so many of our great sages have discussed and examined this crucial order of not adding and not subtracting. And friends, contrary to some belief, doing more does not make you more observant. In many instances, you are actually violating the law. In fact, Rashi said that adding may actually lead to taking away. And in the post-biblical world, This became a delicate task, and it begged great caution in interpretation. The law in the Torah is presented as divine, but it requires human strength and wisdom to carry it out. We all know the defining moment for Israel's history was the Great Epiphany at the foot of Mount Sinai. We also know that in this book, Moses uses incredible skill to tie the past, the present, and the future together so that in transcending time, whosoever reads this feel it was they who were there when God revealed his law in thunder and lightning. But as we heard, the images have been removed here. Moses says, the sound of words you did hear, but no image did you see. Unlike in Exodus, where we are told all the people saw the sounds, that is the thunder and the lightning. The visual is being replaced by the audio only. The words. And as Moses reminds the people, the Lord spoke to them from the midst of the fire all those years ago. I'm talking all about how to give. They don't act with much honesty, but you point the way to the truth when you say, all you need is love. And he reminds them that the Lord gave them the 10 words that he wrote on 2 tablets of stone. But they saw no image, lest they act ruinously and make a sculpted image of any likeness, not of male or female, of any beast, of any winged bird, of anything that crawls, of any fish in the waters. And friends, his sermon proceeds to give a grand evocation of the account of creation in Genesis 1. And so in a very short sentence, Moses ties creation to the revelation at Sinai. And not with our fathers, but with us. Friends, it is current for everyone. His mixture of past, present, and future allows each generation to see themselves as personally standing at Sinai, creating a living commitment. And he shifts from singular to plural and back again, so that his words are addressed to each of us as individuals and as a group of friends. It is about the words, and you don't get that same feeling when you read it in the English. We have one term for you, and it could be singular, could be plural, but in the Hebrew, the switching between the you singular and the you plural, so that we get the sense we're being talked to personally. It's very powerful. There's a continual reference to heaven and to earth, the 2 great witnesses which Moses calls upon as he ties the Sabbath to the Exodus. It is no longer cosmic. It is now observe the Sabbath day to hallow it, but before it was remember the Sabbath day. In Exodus, the Sabbath was explained as imitatio Dei, just as God rested after creation, but now it is about liberation from Egypt. The sacredness of the time took on different meaning when it was of cosmic proportion. Perhaps it's because in the mind one must remember, in actions one must observe heaven and earth. And friends, the first occurrence of the Decalogue was during the awe-inspiring Epiphany at Sinai, when God, the creator of heaven and earth, descended from the heavens to make his words known to Israel. And friends, heaven and earth are metaphors for our 2 major faculties, the mind and the heart. To understand intellectually in the heavens above, using our minds, is cognitive thought and belief. To act on wisdom on a practical level, on the earth below with our hearts and wills, is by implementing our understanding through deed and through action. I could go on about the slight changes in wording, and there were incredible changes in the wording, especially about the Sabbath command, but I'll save that for another time. Instead, I would like to move ahead and talk about what we know is the defining prayer in Judaism, said twice a day and found in Deuteronomy 6:4. We refer to it simply as the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. If you know no other prayer, the odds are very good you know this one, and you know it both in its Hebrew and it's English. But of course, 2 of the words have been changed, and we do not say it how it was written. It is written in the Torah with the 4-letter name of God, the Tetragrammaton. But of course, Rabbinic Judaism determined we must not pronounce that name. And so we say Adonai, or our Lord, instead. Why, you ask? I don't know. It's a tradition. Actually, we do know, but that too is for another discussion. The Shema, as it's called, is presented in the imperative, with a verb meaning to hear, to listen, to heed, and to understand. And friends, it is delivered in a way that it means all of those things. And in this book of words of Deuteronomy, there are probably over 80 different forms of listen used. The emphasis is now on listening. Hear the words. It is with words that God created the universe, and with words he gave us the laws to live by. The great events, creation, the patriarchs, Exodus, Sinai, the wilderness tales, are over. What remains are the words, the story of what happened, and the commandments to be observed. The task for the present and for the future is to listen and to learn. Friends, this can best be described as a Hebrew catechism, with its exhortation to stick to God's teachings. Some translations show echad as alone instead of one, but that's not a probable use of the word in biblical Hebrew. And so this prayer has become a ringing declaration of monotheism, and it adds a new dimension to prayer that we hadn't seen before. It says, "You shall love the Lord your God." And in so doing, we have moved beyond the traditional fear of the Lord to incorporate the emotion of love. And we are told it is to be with all your heart and all your soul or being. The heart is the seat of understanding and of feeling in biblical physiology. And all your soul or being, nephesh, not nebish, is our life breath or essential self. And friends, it is to be with all your might. The Hebrew me'od, meaning very, your very self. And we are told we are to teach it to our children, and you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall become circlets between your eyes. And while this may very well have been metaphorical, inscribed amulets have been found in the Near East, and of course early rabbinic Judaism saw this as the command to wear tefillin. The small leather boxes that you'll see on the hand and on the forehead, containing this and other Torah passages. And so what was once a figurative description has become part of rabbinic law. The things that become law are fascinating. The things we added to, there go the dogs, and subtracted from are beyond what you can imagine. We learn by doing and by repeating until we forget the why. Never forget who you are and where you come from and where you are going. And never forget to walk with a dance in your step and a song in your heart. And never forget, the Lord is God, the Lord is one for everyone and everything. Bless you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for writing. Thank you for watching, for listening, for tolerating. You are all beautiful. You are all diamonds in the rough. Congratulations to our beautiful brides, and peace be with you. Shabbat Shalom. I love you. I'll see you next week. All the best.